So, Chris, you want me to start this off, so give me just a couple of seconds to think of something really mean and cruel to say about you. Does it hurt when the dog tries to bury you in the backyard because it thinks you're a bone?
No, not really.
No.
No.
It's amazing you can move with your bones creaking so much. Chris, it's been a month since we last talked. There are exciting events in the world of, I guess, Dungeons and Dragons since we last talked.
Yeah.
I think the biggest one, or at least the most recent one from the time of us recording this, is that just yesterday, Hasbro did a sizzle reel of all of their new stuff coming in 2022. Mm-hmm. And for about half a second, there was a picture of a new D&D starter set called Dungeons & Dragons Dragons of Stormwreck Isle. No idea what it's about, but it looks like it's, from what little information has come out about that, the only thing that they can see is that it's going to retail for about $50, which is...
That's their flat price for everything.
Well, it's over 100% higher than the other two starter sets, which are both at $19.99, or if you're on Amazon, you can probably get them for like $8.99. I've seen them as low as like $7, I think.
Yeah, okay.
So, I mean, there's a new starter set. No idea what it's about, but there's dragons, so I guess I'm ready for it. It's probably, because that's the same time that's going to be the 50th anniversary stuff. Right. It's probably to release alongside.
Yeah, well, one would think. I mean, that I would imagine is only one of the things they'll be doing that year. Yeah. You would think.
Well, maybe it'll be like a starter set where they release all of like the updated rules or things of that nature, and it's just a way for you to plunge in there. But again, like $50 for it should have a lot more stuff than the other ones, because I can't imagine paying $50 for what was in the previous starter sets, even though they're
a soft cover book.
They are pretty good.
Softcover book with a small adventure. Ooh, and some dice.
Yes, and a random encounter table that will TPK your players about 100% of the time.
Yeah. I don't think that obviously they're not going to put a hardcover in there, but if they are going to release new rules, it's going to have to be pretty large, one would think.
Yeah, well, it might be that it's an updated SRD included in there. Player character sheets, because if you're going to make a player character, you need sheets for that. Probably a set of dice, and then maybe they'll include like large maps or maybe some minifigs or something like that to justify the price point for it. Or maybe shipping is just killing them, like it's killing the rest of the world, and that's the only way they can make money now.
Paper is expensive. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what's in it. I mean, we could ramble on and speculate the whole episode, but
yeah, I'm fairly confident I will not be in it.
You never know.
Yeah, you're right. They just haven't contacted me yet. They just assume I'll be willing to chip myself with every package.
Well, they probably haven't actually written half of it, so having art's easy.
What do you need beyond the title Dragons of Stormwreck Isle?
Nothing. A new character. That character sheet you're talking about.
Oh, there you go. Perfect. Chris, you had some news you wanted to talk about.
I did? Oh, yeah, I did. Mine's more on the business side.
Yes, yours is the boring side.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean the business side.
Well, we had talked, I think, last week about the whole D&D Beyond issue with,
people leaving and all that stuff.
Right, not really getting any support, what's going on with them, and I will have to say that your conspiracy theory, I think was going to work. I had said that they would probably just buy D&D Beyond, which they still may do, but Hasbro has a new... What's
president.
her title? Is it new president, Cynthia Williams?
I didn't vote for her.
No, it's not a democracy.
Wrong president.
Yeah. And she's coming over from Microsoft, and she's to lead Wizards of the Coast, but also digital gaming business. And that's where I think that it's going to get into really focusing on the virtual side of the game. She has a lot of experience in that from what I've read over at online over at Microsoft.
I mean, this is something they've been trying to work on since like the release of 4E, and I assume like in the later years of 3E, like they wanted to do like their own virtual tabletop thing. They had a character generator for D&D 4E that they then let die. Like,
yeah, but she actually has the experience to do it. And I mean, coming over from Microsoft, it's not like they were just like, hey, you can come do this. I'm sorry, you have actually no experience in the field. Now, you could hire, someone that has experience in virtual tabletops, but she's coming over, and I mean, she is probably the reason that gaming on Xbox exploded the way it did. She was in charge of that, and she also was, I hate to say it, but she worked at Amazon for, I think, about 10 years and was the lead on their e-commerce. So she's got experience in the field. Normally what'll happen when someone like this comes over from a company, she'll poach people. So you can imagine that some of the probably lead developers will come over from Microsoft. And with WotC having another record year in sales, and I think they crossed $1 billion.
Wow.
Then I'm sure they can afford it, other than the 6 guys sitting around in an office, half-assing adventures and monsters, and then doing no editing on it. But you never know. No, they actually have been putting out some good stuff, and the editing's been a bazillion times better. The art's been a lot better, and hey, the bookbinding's even been better.
yeah, it's better than how the player's handbook was.
So I'm excited to see her come over. What's his name here? Chris Cox, who is ascending up to the head of Hasbro.
What a fun way of saying that.
Horrible.
He's
name.
Ascending to new heights.
I think he really wanted to do this, but didn't have the experience. So now they're bringing someone in with the experience in technology, e-commerce, gaming, that will take them to the next level. Also,
he also came from Microsoft.
Mm-hmm. Huh. He was business side, obviously, and while she has a lot more technical experience, you can also expect to see, I am positive of this, you can expect to see more games rolling out. Baldur's Gate 3, in my opinion, has been a clusterfuck of a rollout.
I have not played Baldur's Gate 3. Actually, in fact, right now I'm playing Pathfinder Kingmaker.
Yeah, I see
which is, I think, kind of like similar vein, where it's a computer role-playing game, but... It
reminded me of Neverwinter Nights.
Okay,
from the little bit I've seen of it.
It's definitely like, not Pathfinder Torment, Planescape Torments. Where you have a group of, you have an adventuring party and you're going out and doing, basically, Paizo's Kingmaker adventure path.
You know that I know that you're not doing any dump stack work, because when I'm on, you haven't hidden your profile, so when I jump on Discord, it's Stephen Banstra. Currently playing Pathfinder.
It's fine. It's only been 20 hours in the past week.
Okay, which is way less than I've played Dota. So, anyways. So
pot. Luke is calling the kettle.
Yeah, I know. So I'm excited to see what's going to happen. I think we'll have more games. I mean, technically, the movies will fall under her, because they're planning on doing more, depending on how this one does. We'll see.
Well...
God, they should have brought back Jeremy Irons. That
yeah,
would have been awesome.
I mean, that's the only way that you could top the 2000 Dungeons and Dragons. All right, well, that's good news for maybe the digital side of WotC. We'll find out. And I mean, congrats to Chris Cox, who went from Hasbro, now he's the CEO of... he went from WotC, and now he's the CEO of all of Hasbro, which is the parent company that has Nerf, Play-Doh, Peppa Pig, Marvel, a huge
Magic.
Bunch of... Yeah, well, Magic. Well, that was already under WotC.
Peppa Pig?
Yeah, Peppa Pig I think is under the Hasbro.
You don't have kids. How do you know about Peppa Pig? You're looking it up online, okay.
My Little Pony, Littlest Pet Shop, Tonka. You remember Tonka?
Dude,
those were the real kids' toys, the kids who meant business when they wanted to play.
Dump trucks when they were actually made of metal and would hurt when they smashed into you. Yeah, I remember those.
Oh, and then also the incredibly awful board game Monopoly. That sucks, and we should never talk about.
It's good when you're a kid.
No, it's not.
Well,
it's
it was
never
good when I was a kid. When
that
you was
have
1970.
If you have 5,000 homebrew rules, sure, it's fine.
Well, if you're the banker, you win every time, because you're just I'll slide some of this money away.
Well, here is my tip for running the bank so well today.
Yes, I earn a salary.
So the last bit of fun information we're going to talk about is that Doctor Who is now getting a Dungeons & Dragons 5e compatible tabletop role-playing game, why?
I don't know.
5e is combat-centric. There's barely any rules upholding the social structure beyond roll a d20, add a modifier. Maybe you hit a DC that the DM pulled out of their ass. And Doctor Who is yeah, I guess there's kind of combat, but it's more we're running away from combat.
Run, open door with sonic screwdriver.
Maybe it's just all it is just chase rules.
Could be. That could be kind of fun. Well,
It's-
but you get a TARDIS. It's bigger on the inside.
I mean, there's already a Doctor Who role-playing game that is focused on diplomacy. And so the way it works is whenever there would be a combat situation, you have to go through a diplomacy stage. And if only the diplomacy stage fails, that's when you drop down into combat, because the way that the show works is you always try to talk yourself out of those type of situations.
Right. Yeah, no.
Or you run away.
Yeah, exactly. No, I mean, I don't know much about it, but based, on the little bit I do, it feels like it's targeted towards the people that are shifting with the game, that are moving more towards role playing. It seems like it would be very role playing based and not combat based.
Well,
so
that's
three
everywhere. Pages of rules.
Yeah.
And then what else are you going to put in the core rule book for Doctor Who?
Maybe they could, like you said, there could be chase rules. I don't know.
Well, I mean, I did some work for Wyvern Gaming during Gen Con. I ran a bunch of their games so that they would pay for me to go to Gen Con for 4 days, so I didn't have to shell out the cash. Really? And so they made Stargate also 5e compatible, and their reasoning behind it was simply it's the biggest name, everyone knows it, and so I can't help but imagine that's the same reason why Doctor Who's doing it, because it's the biggest name in the game, and why not? It'll be an easy way to get money, because they'll be like, oh, it's 5e compatible, maybe I can throw this in my homebrew game or something like that.
Well, there's plenty of alien races that if you're allowed to play, I mean, if you're a Dalek, your whole basis is to kill
I don't feel
shit.
like they're going to let you play a Dalek. It's going to be human.
That'd be awesome.
It's going to be human, or maybe one or two other just oh, I'm a human, but I have gills, or I'm a human, but I have little face tentacles. I have little barbels.
I'll have to take a deeper look into it.
If you want a game with a huge amount, over 50 different options for alien races, you should look at Starfinder. It's a D20 game system, and you can be an ooze, you can be a dragon thing, you can it is amazingly weird aliens. There's a little guy who is actually two different pieces. There's a ball, and then the alien sits on top of the ball, and then the ball just rolls around, and that's just his normal alien physique.
Yeah,
there's a fish trapped inside of a huge bubble of water, and that's your character.
I had a hard enough time with the Leshy character someone played in Pathfinder.
You don't like little nature spirits that have been cutified instead of hardcore murder monsters from actual folklore?
Yeah, no. I don't have a problem with not having a creature whose sole existence is to slaughter things, but still, it's weird.
Yeah. But yeah, I guess I'll keep an ear. I mean, I used to watch Doctor Who. I think I kind of gave up on it after Peter Capaldi's maybe second or third season.
Yeah.
I just kind of lost track and just kind of stopped watching. Not because I wasn't enjoying it. It's just life kind of got in the way, and I never caught back up with it. So, I mean, maybe this is a good enough excuse for me to rewatch it all. Christopher Eccleston is my favorite Doctor. I feel like I just butchered his last name by accident. Though David Tennant is still great. I like Clara as a a companion. What about Chris? Do you have any fond memories of Doctor Who?
Yeah, I'm old enough to remember watching the original with my dad.
Yeah. Oh yes, where the people would crawl around in green silk cloths, and that would be the monster.
It was always in the same set too. I swear to God, they had 2 sets for the entire thing. Did you actually know that Doctor Who, when it first came out, was supposed to be the first season? It was an educational show. It was supposed to teach children about the history of the United Kingdom.
Oh, I'm not surprised by that. Yeah, and they also didn't have the idea that he would regenerate. It's just their actor died, and they're like, well, how do we fix this problem?
And so then they were just like, no one's really watching it. We'll make it an action thing where they go back in history, and it was good. I really liked Doctor Who. I watched it when I was a kid.
I really liked the movie for the 8th Doctor. It was very good, and I think that's the only thing he was in, if I remember correctly.
Well, Eccleston's coming back for a short. I'd have to look it up, but either a movie or a short 4-parter. They're bringing him back.
All right. Somehow this is turning into a Whovian news podcast. All right, so the last bit of news, and I keep saying last in this. I blame
Chris.
Chris.
There was a third last bit of news. All right, hit me.
Well, this is Dumpstat news.
Oh, okay. Then I probably still.
So it's better news. That's why you saved it for the last, because you saved the best for last. We just released our second part of our 3-part adventure that takes characters from level 4 to 7, I believe. level 8,
I don't know,
somewhere around
let
there.
me touch it. So.
It is the second part of the Gangs of Ferrum adventure, where you are taking a gang and trying to survive on the mean streets of Ferrum, a massive city based in my world, Talia.
Canal City.
Yes, it is. Ferrum, the Canal City, is kind of its kind of hallmark towards it. There's a massive canal running through it that kind of separates the haves and the have-nots. It's the city itself is kind of basically loosely based on kind of Victorian England with a little bit of the Industrial Revolution thrown in there. So for magic and technology, where magic begets science and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, so it's in our store right now. If the world itself sounds like something interesting, or if you're interested in the game, we'll recommend starting off with the free primer to Talia. Right?
Yes. There is a free Neiko's Primer to Talia, and then we also have a city guide to help you run the Ferrum adventure, just Ferrum, the Canal City. Both of those 2 documents are free. It's about 40 pages for each document, so there's a lot of lore already kind of there for you, but it's not so much that you'll be overwhelmed. And it's just kind of easy reference material.
Yeah.
And then the third part of the adventure, hopefully... will be out July.
Before or after you lose your mind?
Who knows? I'm just trying different writing processes to try and speed up how I write. And so it's an adventure, just like the adventure I'm writing, except with less death and more headaches and ibuprofen.
Well, it's 90% you, so.
Hey, I agree.
Do what you wish.
That brings us to our topic for today, Chris.
Hooray! What is it?
We're going to talk about ways to spice up combat, ways to spice up your dungeons, things of that nature. So it's not just you're in a corridor that's 5 feet wide, there's a door 30 feet away from you, there's 2 kobolds, and fight.
So does spice up mean harder monsters? Because you could just raise the AC a little bit on every monster and it's harder.
No, spice up. Make it fantastical. You don't have to set everything in just a boring dungeon or just out in the forest with a couple of trees here and there. Find ways to encourage your players to interact more with the battlefield.
Oh, so basically hold players to, oh wait, you didn't cast the light cantrip on your shield? Well, you're in the dark, so what are you going to do?
That reminds me of you talking about the dark. You guys were exploring it through a dungeon once, and I put up several darkness, permanent darkness spells.
Fuck you.
And then I hit a Sphere of Annihilation inside of one of them.
I was so angry.
You're fine.
Yeah, and then...
It didn't damage your magic armor.
Yeah, no, but in that campaign, I had someone cast darkness, where I was standing, I was in the area of effect 3 or 4 times.
Yep.
I was human. And I was just what the fuck?
They could see through the darkness. What was your problem?
I was the tank.
You're fine.
It was why do you keep doing this? Well, you're standing in front of the biggest monster. Yeah, handle everybody else. I've got this. Sometimes. But, okay.
Yeah, the other thing is, recently, for my Saturday group, you guys are currently in an underwater dungeon. And in the system we're playing in, you only have an hour for water breathing. So now, that's another way to spice up your dungeon, is just throwing a time constraint on you guys.
Yeah, why am I the only one that seems to be concerned with how much time we have left breathing?
It was perfect. You guys went in there, you guys were knocking down enemies, you guys didn't spend 10 minutes for an hour to rest and relax. Someone's going into the boss fight with 20 hit points out of 80.
I know, it was hey, let's take a rest. It just takes 10 minutes to heal.
You guys...
I'm really? Because we're down pretty low on our...
You guys went in with 5 players, you're going to leave with 4. Or 3.
As long as it's not me. That's
or
fine.
1. You only need 1 to steer a ship.
That's me.
That's kind of our goal for this episode, is just to talk about ways that we can start spicing up combats, make them a little bit more exciting, give players something to remember each combat by. Mm-hmm. And not every combat needs to be spiced up. You don't need to throw cayenne pepper just on a random encounter just to make it memorable, because if everything's memorable, then, well, it's not really that special at that.
But, I mean, that's an important thing, it's an important topic to talk about, because it does get boring after a while, like you said. You can yes, you can go and talk to the king or talk to merchants and blah, blah, blah. And yeah, that can be fun. That's good role playing. It can be a little different every time. But realistically, when you walk into combat, it's a lot of I hit things with my sword and the person behind me casts fireball and you hope you're not in like the way of it, and it ends unless you get a little creative. And creative can come from both the DM side and the player side. Players sometimes rely on the same old spells and whine when they don't get a powerful sword because all they do is hit shit with it.
Chris, don't talk about yourself like that.
Hey, I'm playing a wizard that
doesn't need a sword.
That doesn't do any damage with freaking spells. I got to get new dice.
Yeah. So I need to stop saying so.
So I'll say it for you.
And then there's also the other side of that is players can also help DMs spice up combat by using more control spells. And I know Chris has written a bunch of things about his favorite kind of control the battlefield or battlefield control spells.
Yes, it's a pretty long one. That was a while ago too. It's
several
a
parts.
6-part series.
Wow.
Okay. I must have been really scrambling for crap to do and.
Or you're really excited by battlefield control spells.
I do like battlefield spells. I mean, that was the reason I'm playing a wizard now is because I wanted to do battlefield spells, but I really didn't read close enough in the Pathfinder system because they kind of suck. So, actually, I take that back. Some are a lot better. Some were disappointing because I didn't look at them. Like Grease, for example, is fantastic. I mean, it makes sense. You got to get up. You got to make checks.
Can't use Grease underwater, can you, Chris?
Nope. But you can use it on a ship. But, something like Sleep isn't as good. Although I did put a shark to sleep, so that was pretty fun. You were angry about that.
Yes, I was sad about that.
So I should have looked a little bit more into it. But that said, I take that comment back. There are some great spells. Unfortunately, I had done, like I said, a 6-part series on 5e spells. Yeah. But there's quite a lot.
Yeah, so I think we could start at just kind of the basics for terrain. So let's imagine you're in a forest, Chris, and you have to go into like a fight. Like, if you're thinking about this, there are a variety of ways that you can shape the forest so that it kind of provides different options for your players, especially if this is like an ambush. So we can look at the first combat in Lost Mines of Phandelver.
Good luck saying that. Lost Mines.
Yes, the Lost Mines of where the party is coming up in their wagon and they see that there is a dead horse in the road. And I believe like a toppled over wagon. And so what happens here is the adventurer just assumes like the party gets off their horse, they check what's going on, and then they are surprise attacked by a bunch of goblins hiding in the tree. The way you could spice this up, not necessarily for this event or for like that specific combat, because that combat's already known for TPKing first time players. Because amazingly, first level characters, not a lot of hit points when you get critted on by a goblin.
Yeah, it's a lesson in the power of ranged weapons.
Yes. And so, like, if you want your ambushers to have a little bit more protection in this type of situation, sprinkle in difficult terrain. They're going to be smart enough, if they're ambush-style creatures, to hide behind something that's going to slow down other creatures. And so you can add in, like, underbrush, you can add in shrubs, fallen trees to just slow down your players. And so that's going to affect, like, your fighters, your barbarians, all trying to get there. But people like your monk are going to love it because now they get that extra speed and it kind of really feels like they're moving faster than everyone else. Because yes, while they are slowed down by the terrain, they have a greater movement speed, in which case they can hit those monsters in the same round that they move over to them, while everyone else either has to wait 2 rounds or they have to move and then dash to get there, and then they're not doing anything else. And so as you're slowing down the players, other players who have classes that can kind of counteract that can get a chance to shine, and your monsters get to live another round peppering them with arrows.
Or you just use a ranged weapon.
Or the sword and board fighter finally figures out how to throw a knife.
Yeah, exactly. It's like,
and then they're like, I only bought 1 knife. Can someone throw that back to me?
I've been carrying this dagger around for a really long time. I don't know what to do with it. Yeah, it's
Yeah, I mean, I've seen that in a lot of like adventures where it's just like, yeah, this one combat's gonna kill me because I refuse to carry anything with ranged weapons, and no, I'm not gonna learn my mistakes from a previous combat where I had difficulties hitting someone flying above me. I'm just gonna complain. trying to increase the amount of distance between characters and their targets kind of encourages the more ranged options, as well as, I mean, if your monsters are all ranged combatants, then they should not be as good at melee fighting as they are at range.
Right.
And so that should be the reward for the players, is if they are able to successfully get in closing, and if they are able to successfully get close and get in range to hit them, then the reward for them should be like, this person is physically weaker. They cannot deal as much damage with their puny little melee weapons as they can from afar.
Right. Here, we'll give it a second. I don't know what she's doing. Yay.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you touched on something else that I have truly mixed feelings on, which is flying creatures. And not so much flying creatures, but flying character classes. And now there's 3. It used to be...
There's 3? There's the Owlin, there's the Aarakocra.
And the Fairy.
Oh, the Fairy. I keep forgetting the Fairy's a thing.
Yeah, so...
Knock 'em prone. Fuck 'em.
Yeah, it hurts when you fall from like 40 feet.
Oh, I'm safe from arrows up here. No, you're not.
No, you're not.
You are never safe from longbow.
And it's, at lower levels, it is such a big advantage. Because I went through, there's not a lot of flying monsters at lower levels.
I mean, the detriment for flying creatures is that they're going to end up having lower AC. Because they can't wear, I think, medium or heavy armor, so they're stuck with light armor. But then again, they're going to max out their dex anyway so that they can use ranged weapons, so it kind of evens itself out there.
And, it's just going to be like, oh, yeah, what's the range on your bow? I'm just going to fly 10 feet higher than that.
And then I'll fly down on my turn, shoot, and then
fly back up. Right. So, again, lower levels... I struggle with it.
Well, at the same time, we can then, if you do have flying characters, think about the tree cover. If there's, if they're flying above the trees to avoid short bows or something like that, now they're having a greater difficulty of, shooting between the leaves and stuff. Mm-hmm. So you could give cover to your monsters. You could have them roll at disadvantage because they're basically firing at, an almost hidden creature.
Right.
The other thing is it's difficult flying through all those branches. Those branches are now difficult terrain. It's going to cost some extra flight to fly past or to navigate the brambles up there.
Yeah, I mean that's a good.
Or they attract a monkey, starts throwing their shit at them.
Yeah, I mean for a forest or obviously if you're dungeon diving, it's it's great. Your biggest natural ability is kind of limited. You just don't fight in the mountains or the plains, and you're good. Yeah,
if you're struggling constantly with flying characters, have the adventure take them into dungeons. Have them take it inside of buildings. It's actually kind of interesting. We just did a deep dive on Aarakocra, which we'll link down in the show notes, where you can play as an Aarakocra, I think in 3E you can play as them. Yep. You count as 2 levels higher than everyone else. So by the time everyone becomes a 3rd level character, you can then take your first level in a class if you're playing as an Aarakocra, which is kind of an interesting way that they balance things way back when.
Yeah.
I say way back when. That was 21 years ago. So yeah, way back when. And so, but the other thing about them is they took a penalty whenever they were inside because they had the supernatural fear of being
right.
They had claustrophobia.
Yeah.
And so you can kind of play that up a bit more with your player and, talk to your player, see if they're cool with playing up this fear, claustrophobia. But also don't do it to such an extent that you basically nerf their character and the only cool thing they get is reduced by always being in a building. Make sure you throw them a bone every once in a while so that they can use their flight and feel cool and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, more buildings.
Yeah. And I mean, to your point about, it ties into, adapting terrain to provide players with the challenges that they may not have to deal with, like when you're in a dungeon. And we'll get to that in a second. Now, on the reverse side, players can really mess with a DM. There are tons of terrain spells that you can, either slow them down, immobilize them, or, basically plunge them into darkness. I went back and was looking at this. There's a buttload of spells. I mean, even darkness would shut down ranged combatants. You just throw darkness on yourself. Now they can't see you. Now, while you can't see them, that's not a big deal. They can't hit you, and you get a chance to kind of form up and figure out what you want to do. Right. No, I mean, it's one of the ones I was looking at, this was actually one that you can use in a dungeon and I went through the rules, and it actually works. I mean, it's a create bonfire allows you to it's a small area of effect, but you can really mess with somebody. It's like, okay, you're in a 5-foot hallway. Yeah, create bonfire right in front of them. Yeah, it's not going to do a lot, but it's still kind of annoying.
Yeah, I mean, my wife, she used create bonfire all the time and just screwed over my monsters constantly.
And that was the basis for putting that as my very first one. I mean, another cantrip is mold earth. Yeah, 5-foot square doesn't seem like much, but that can be the difference between someone getting up to you and not getting up to you.
Yeah, I mean, that's like instantly like difficult terrain to try and navigate through, because you got to get down and then you have to clamber up and then you got to keep going.
Well, I do hate you because I was really looking forward to my favorite one a player can use is Flaming Sphere. I'm in a water campaign.
Well,
that blows.
That was your choice.
Yeah, I know. I didn't really think that through. But, you can't cast it on a boat. Roll around in a ship. And that's not good for a wooden ship after a while.
I've heard that. Strangely enough, I've heard that wood doesn't like fire.
Right. So,
I think that was a Pokemon combination.
I never really got into Pokemon. But, there's a lot. I mean, that was one of the things that really drove me to want to play more of an area of effect kind of character. Because there's a lot. I mean, let's see. Third level has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 spells that you can use to control an area effect. And yeah, so you have options instead of being like, hey, third level, guess what I'm taking? Fireball. I mean, use lightning.
If I destroy the terrain, does that count as controlling it?
I mean, I love the idea of plant growth. I mean, you're a druid, and maybe you get tired of turning yourself into a bear.
Plant growth has screwed over so many of my giants.
You do that. I mean, you can cast a Sleet Storm, which I think we're going to be getting later this week. Fantastic. That's where you get the first 3 of the wall spells. I mean, Wall of Sand, that's horrible. Wall of Water is very boring. And Wall of Wind, you want to screw over a flying creature. There's another one. Although I did knock one of your flying creatures down off the ship into the water with a gust spell. You were not happy with me on that one.
Well, I wanted them to live so that I could at least have one victory in my life.
Yeah, no. Well, it's not my fault you keep throwing monsters that you know we can beat.
That's rude.
So to your point, it works both ways.
Yeah.
A DM can provide challenging terrain to give a player an opportunity to think outside the box.
Mm-hmm.
And then a player can also try and think outside the box by using a spell to make a DM sad.
That's every week.
Again, you've killed plenty of characters.
And you don't even have to think about terrain. Like, I mean, we talked before, like, using a forest. Mm-hmm. Well, like, what if you are actually traveling through, like, the plains? There's no forest. There's hardly any underbrush. Like, how would you then, like, befuddle or make, like, the combat interesting? And at that point, like, you can use weather. You can use like sudden gusts of wind that make ranged attacks have disadvantage at close range, and at long range they automatically miss.
Yep.
You can do like powerful sleet, like rainstorms, just like coming down so that your visibility is like reduced, and have them fight like creatures like Tremorson, so they always know where they are, but the players can't see them through like the hail of rain.
Yeah, when we wrote the latest deep dive, it was yeah, you had to get through like a horrid like surrounding area of mountains where it's just a constant storm to get to the
Oh yeah, you're talking about in the plane of air. There's
yes.
Where the Vati or the wind, the Archdukes of Wind are located. Yeah, so they have like these massive storms. And speaking of like windstorms, I'll leave a link down in the show notes, but I've also written rules to how you can include a hurricane into your combat, where it's like it moves like 100 feet or so every round. And so like that can be something where it's like your party's fighting something, and then all of a sudden they see like a twister start forming near them, and now it's not so much a matter of fighting the monsters, it's running away from this windstorm that seems to be like supernaturally hell-bent on chasing them down.
It seems like something out of a movie where there's a big fight going on against your mortal enemy, and then you both kind of look into the distance and see this and look at each other, and you're like, okay, we're done, and just start running away together.
Well, that was the movie Twister, right? With the cow?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or I feel like I just dated myself.
Yeah.
When was Twister released?
Twister. I hate when you do this because you're going to be like, I was 12. And I'm going to be like, I was 36.
I was 4, released in 1996.
holy shit. I was gonna, then I'm,
Oh shit, Carrie Ells was in there. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, he plays kind of like the dick in that.
I need to rewatch it now. It's been so long. I feel like I haven't seen it in 20 years.
I wonder how it's gonna hold up. It's a lot of CGI. Was it actually CGI back then?
Well, there was a ride over at Universal Studios that was Twister that was fine.
Yeah, unlike the ones now that my kids like to go on, and that I am gonna die. So yeah, well, there was a while where you were actually, I mean, it harkened back to AD&D where you were supposed to, every day you wake up and you secretly roll dice behind your file cabinets because you're Gary Gygax and determine what the weather's going to be for the day 3 times a day.
Dang.
Because you'd be like, what's the weather when you wake up? What's the weather at midday? If you don't climb into a magnificent mansion to go to sleep, are you going to get rained on? And I'm not talking about your bard pissing on you either. It was annoying when you were DMing, but it was kind of fun because you could mess with them. And you had something like that, but it was specific to the locale that we are at, I think.
Yeah, so what I did, there's actually several random weather generators out there. I can link one that I've used in the past. And so what I would do is I would just go there. I would kind of put in kind of like the geographic region that the place is taking part in, give it a season, and then I would just have it randomly generate weather. So it might be a clear, nice day out. And then I would roll like a D4, D6, D8, D10, like whatever I was feeling. And that would be the number of days in that month where it'd have that weather. And so it could be a massive rainstorm for 4 days. Or it could be just perfect cloudless weather for 10 days or whatever it is. And I would do that for about 2 or 3 months, like pre-plan in a calendar that I kept for each of my games and record what that weather event was and then just tell it to the players. And it didn't always affect combat, but I was always excited when it did because, I mean, like you guys were fighting demons at the city walls and there was just rain lashing down at you. Like that's some Helm's Deep shit right there.
It was unpleasant. Weather's a very good one. It's a little more annoying than when you're floating on the astral sea and someone's like, I'm just going to kick you off the ship, and the ship keeps going and you're floating through the ether.
Well, it also gives druids, clerics, and wizards a reason to take control weather spell at 8th level. Wow, that's an expensive spell.
That is a powerful spell, though.
Yeah,
I mean, it is. I mean, it's stupid powerful.
I mean, it's also great because it has a casting time of 10 minutes. So if you want there to be a hurricane or like a tornado or something like coming through, like that gives the party a chance. Like maybe they do have enough time to cast a spell. Maybe they don't. And it's like, what do they do when they don't have enough time to cast a spell? Or maybe they didn't even prepare the spell. And so like this provides them a reason why they would ever take the spell, because it's like control weather. Well, when is that ever going to come up in my games? We never talk about the weather. As far as I'm concerned, it's a bright sunny day, even at midnight, underground, 1,000 feet below the earth.
You live in LA. Every day's beautiful. There's no water anywhere to drink, but everything's beautiful.
We have Goodberry to fix that.
Yeah, exactly. You want to get worse than control weather. Now, at 9th level, everybody takes Wish, right?
Yeah.
Have you seen Storm of Vengeance? It is horrible. I mean, and it's an action to cast.
Oof.
So you start off, it's and you can, oh Jesus, you can cast it up to 2 miles away, and it's a dark cloud appears, spreads to a 360-foot radius. Anyone under the cloud needs to make a Constitution saving throw, or basically you're in a thunderstorm. The thunder's really loud. You take 2d6 damage along with being deafened for 5 minutes. And that sounds great, right? If you can maintain concentration, and it's, let's see, it's a druid spell again. The rain is acid rain. 360 feet of acid rain.
Is it just our world's rain that got teleported to Ferrum?
Yeah. Third round, now it's basically the call lightning spell, as Thor's standing above you, casting 6 lightning bolts down at you. Then, and those hurt because it's a dex save, or you do 10d6 in lightning damage.
Sounds like my rogue's fine though.
Yeah, it starts to hail in the 4th round, and everyone takes 2d6 bludgeoning damage. And
I suppose there's a reason why it's a 9th level spell.
It's cumulative. So you're just getting pummeled with all this damage over and over and over again. So yeah, that sucks.
Yeah, but I mean, like, that's also 9th level. It's, for many people, I mean, like, they might get Control Water, which is a 4th level spell, which can also be used in combats. Actually, most recently, for my Thursday group, they had 3 ships filled with monsters about to attack a settlement that they're trying to protect. And so the wizard cast Control Water and basically grabbed one of the ships in like a whirlpool to kind of like sink it. And then the other ships were being attacked by tidal waves and all sorts of things to try and flood them and to sink them as well. And so that's another way. So the way to also spice up combat is give the players time to prepare. If they can see a threat coming in, they can spend a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes kind of coming up with like the best ways to overcome the encounter. And maybe you won't even roll initiative. And that is a way to make a memorable combat. Is we owned that combat so hard we didn't even have to roll initiative because like we used our spells smartly. We used our abilities intelligently.
You're really relying on players not to be like, okay, in the distance we see a horde of kobolds. Pull out your weapons, boys. Let's just charge forward.
I mean, that's fine too. If that's what the players decide to do.
I'm hiding behind this boulder. Have fun.
That's something that they can do. Like, I mean, in the Dungeon Master's Guide, there's rules for cleaving, which I would enact in such a situation. It's like, if the party's all like, yeah, I'm running in there, we're going to fight 1,000 kobolds, sword the kobold scales. Like, sorry, dragon scales, of course.
Right.
Then, like, you know, that's also an exciting combat because they got to make the decision as to how they're approaching that combat. It's not just 100 kobolds just show up and now you have to roll initiative. Now they get a chance to plan. They get a chance to think through their action.
Well, and I mean, that's something that it would be nice for a party, to your point, to set up an ambush. Can't really ever remember setting up an ambush. What you do is you rely on the rogue to kind of, I'm going to sneak around and you sneak attack and then everybody charge. It's like, no, hey, we're in a forest. Yeah, there's a reason we're in a valley. We could probably clamber up and shoot arrows down at them or push rocks down on them or do something that isn't just running forward and hitting shit with your sword.
Yeah, and you were talking about a valley. That's like a perfect encounter. Like, if there's like sheer cliffs on either side and they're going down into this valley to find like a missing artifact or something, why can't there just be giants on like each side of the cliff and they're just like throwing rocks down? It's like, well, now what do you do, party?
Yeah.
It's like you have to split up. Like, you're not going to be as effective. Do you focus on one while the other one just keeps pelting you with rocks? Like,
I made that mistake. I did that during COVID when I was doing the virtual friends and family game I had.
Oh, no. Did you make them cry?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was my nieces and nephews and, a couple of my brother-in-laws. And so there's some little kids in there and probably should have realized that going through a valley and having a choke point wasn't the best idea.
No, that's a perfect idea. The kids got to learn one day.
Yeah, and they weren't exactly high level at that point, and one of them got smushed by a rock.
Hey, if you can dodge a rock, you can dodge a rock.
You can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a dodgeball.
Yeah, but they got better, so it's fine.
Well, yeah, when they rolled a new character.
Exactly, they got better.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's also memorable. Like, when a character dies, like, I remember each of the combats where a character fell because it's memorable. And
for you.
Well, I mean, I'm excited by it. But, like, it's, the idea behind that is that, like, I mean, not every table is comfortable with character death. There are some tables that's like, no, I want no risk of character death, but I still want engaging combat. So
play a different fucking game, though. I'm sorry. I can really... That's actually, I've seen a lot of stuff on that lately, and that to me is...
I mean, that's what we have resurrection rules for, which I always feel like are way too nice to you guys.
It's not the game.
Here's some gold cost. All right, your buddy's back.
Yeah, that's not... I mean, yeah, that's an option. I mean, you should have the option to bring somebody back in certain cases. If you're stuck in a dungeon and I do something stupid and get myself killed, I'm dead. Mm-hmm. Most DMs, don't go out of their way to kill character. 90%, I bet you, at least in our campaign, all of the characters' deaths were either a really horrible set of circumstances where it's like, oh, you got critted. You probably should have backed up.
Probably should have had a better character.
Yeah, but that, to that point, the player made a mistake. You know, you don't go out there looking to kill characters. It's like, did you really think this through? Like, I don't know. We're fighting the boss right now in our upcoming adventure. Did you think through going in with 20 hit points? Obviously not.
Gotta push forward, Chris. Never stop moving forward.
No, it's, you know, again, 90% of player deaths, they're on the player. You know, sure, you get bad dice rolls. That happens. I get it. And a DM may be like, okay, you're down and you failed your 3 saving throws, and I've tried a lot of ways not to have you die, but you're dead. But most of the time it's because I'm an idiot and I'm doing something. I don't think through, okay, I'm going to run up and hit something. Oh, crap. I only have 5 feet of movement back, or I have 10 feet of movement back, or 15, or whatever it is, and I never thought about attack of opportunity while I was at it. That's our fault.
Yeah.
But I think that, hey, you know what? I agree with you. It does, the fear of having a character die makes you have to think through a little bit more your actions, depending on what you're fighting. And so maybe instead of being like, oh, yeah, unless I'm metagaming, be like, I've never seen this creature before. Maybe I should stay back and see what kind of check I can do to see what it does.
Yeah, let's let someone else get hit first and see how bad it is, actually.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know if you noticed, but I've started, you know, in our campaign now, I've started doing that. It's like, I'm going to take a second because I don't have a fucking clue. Although you throw our deep dive monsters at us, so I actually do know what they do, and I get annoyed. And I'm like, oh, God. But I take a second and be like, hey, what do I know about this creature? And you're just like rolling die. And you're like, okay, what do you want to know? That's a valid thing to do, you know? And then you just start screaming at everybody to run away. So, I mean...
Well, and like going along with that, like you don't have to specifically like try and kill a character. Like if you do happen to knock a character down, like that doesn't like your monsters don't have to specifically like focus on that down creature. Now
Right.
there are situations where you want the monsters to focus on a down creature because it makes sense for them. If a zombie knocks a creature to 0 hit points, they're not just going to be like, well, I guess he's dead. I'm going to go hit someone else. It's going to be, ooh, stop fighting back.
Dinner.
I'm going to start eating. At which point the zombie would like crouch down and start like trying to eat them, which is another way to like freak the rest of your party out. It's like, these people don't stop.
Yeah.
We need to get our buddy up and we need to start pulling backwards and like try and like keep this thing away from eating us because that's dangerous.
Yeah. And if you're me, you'd be like, you go do that. I'll provide cover from the back.
I'm going to make sure our way behind us is clear.
Exactly. I'm going to go scout. I'll be back. Maybe. No, I think that an important way to spice up the game is to always have the chance of you dying. Not the fear of you dying. I mean, that's stupid. That's to go in every battle. You're like, oh, what's going to happen to my character? No. But knowing that it could happen if you decide if you're going to play a character and you know that you're not going to die, so you can just run in and do all sorts of stupid shit. That's not what we're talking about. That's not spicing up your game. That is limiting your game to the things that you can do. You have no fear of anything. To be able to force a DM with a creature and a player with his character to think things through a little bit more makes a lot of sense. And to me, that's a way to spice up the game.
Yeah. And not every combat you have to go into has to be like hardcore Diablo mode.
Oh, no.
You can...
Well, barbarians usually.
You can have just like easy one-off encounters which are just allow the player to feel powerful. Mm-hmm. If all they're fighting is monsters that are way stronger than they are, then it's just going to like, they're always going to feel like they're never getting better.
Right.
But if you bring back a monster that they previously fought, maybe had difficulty with, maybe a character died to, and now they're fighting that and they're just mashing through them, like that gives them a sense of power and is something else that they can remember. It's like, ooh, I remember how these monsters fight. Now we know how to use our tactics against them, and we can avoid watching Bob have to make up a new character for the
Unless
fifth
we don't
time
like
in a row.
Bob.
Well,
then we have to sit down with Bob and be like, hey, stop doing stupid stuff.
well, there's
right?
Bob, son of Bob. There's
Yeah. I think it's also important to note that homebrew is definitely a way to spice up the game, but that's not necessarily what we're talking about here. I mean, you throw in a lot of homebrew for us, so it does provide an extra kind of like thrill to the game. You know, I'm not getting, it's like one of the campaigns I had my legendary, it was actually an artifact item. You could have very easily just been like, flip through, it's Whelm, here you go. It's right out of the DMG, it's here. But no, you custom created something, and it was pretty neat. It also sang to me a lot, and it was weird. But
only pirate shit.
Yeah, I know. In a language I couldn't understand. So,
well, it sounded like the whales.
Yeah. So, I mean, homebrew is definitely a way to do it. If you throw a monster at somebody, I'm going to tweak it a little bit, because especially if you have someone that's like, I've memorized the monster manual.
Well, yeah, and like the monster manual for 5th edition is just, most of the monsters are a stack of hit points and they have a multi-attack for a bite and claw. Like, it's like, great, exciting. Yeah. That's the same thing they just fought, except this one has more hit points and their bite claw doesn't do D8, D6, D6. It does D10, D8, D.
It has the body of a bear and the face of an owl. Great.
Oh, look, it's me in the morning. But like, so definitely finding ways to spice up monsters. Maybe, the easiest way to spice that up is if they hit you, the player has to make a save or they fall prone. Like, now there's something different going on. Now they have to contend with being knocked prone. Yeah, or maybe it knocks them back 5 feet. And so when you do that, think of ways that your monster can utilize knocking people back 5 feet. It's like, they're fighting on a cliff and they don't have to fall 100 feet, but they could fall 10 feet, 20 feet, 30 feet, in which case, at that point, they're taking a little extra damage, and there is kind of like this fear of being knocked off. Like, even if it isn't that far of a drop, it's still like, if I get knocked off, it's going to take me a long time to get back into the combat, and that's going to shape things up.
Unless it's a dragon turtle that you polymorph into a llama and then throw it off a cliff into the ocean. I've
forgiven you guys for that.
No, you haven't. You've put the fear of God into every character I have, no matter what campaign or what system we're using.
It's amusing to me that you're so worried that I'm going to bring a dragon turtle to specifically kill you guys for...
No, not you guys, me.
Sorry, to specifically kill you, even though you weren't the one to polymorph it into a llama and then chuck it off the cliff.
Well, I think I taunted it while it was in the water.
Yes, you did taunt it while it was in the water. It then went and destroyed the ship that brought you guys to an island.
I never claimed to play smart characters. But, in tweaking the existing rules work. And, my favorite campaign that I will always remember was when I had Tiny, the Shield Guardian. Mm-hmm. That was awesome. He essentially became my character. My character was great. I played a paladin and I loved him, or cleric. And I loved him. Paladin was the next campaign. I don't even remember what he played. I remember Tiny. He was awesome.
You were a war cleric with a shield guardian.
Yeah. This was the character that they fucking kept casting darkness on me. But we alternated, and I think it might have worked for you too to spice it up. We kind of alternated depending on the situation who got to play the Shield Guardian.
No. So what happened was in combat, you controlled him. Out of combat, I had him basically just be a complete idiot that destroyed everything for you. And then it caused more combats for you guys to take part in.
You did let me burn down a bar. That ended poorly. But yeah, so it was fun and it was different, and it definitely for me spiced up the game to the point where I was just like, I will always remember that campaign. Mm-hmm. It was fantastic.
Yeah. The last thing I think we should talk about is just enclosed spaces. Like, if you're in a dungeon, if you're in a building, how are you going to be able to spice up like a warehouse building? How are you going to spice up a dungeon corridor? And at this point, there's a couple of different options. One is traps, of course. Like, maybe you're at like long corridors. There's 2 kobolds who are just firing their slings at your party. The party's like, that's great. We'll just charge in there and we'll go mash them because they're 2 kobolds, like whatever. Except the hallway has traps in it, and they can either try and dodge the traps, they can try and look for the traps, which takes their action to make a perception check. They can try and disable them, which is an action which slows them down, and like the kobolds have more time. Maybe they can stick to ranged weapons, which of course everyone in the party has, but maybe the kobolds are then behind like a little bit of barrier, so they have a boost to their AC. Like, there's a variety of things that you can do to like spice that up. One of my favorite things that I've seen for spicing up a combat in like an enclosed space was a goblin riding on a giant gecko. And the gecko had a climb speed. And so what the goblin would do was like just basically just be a cavalier riding the gecko like along the walls, would ride it upside down on the ceilings and just like stabbing at the players with the lance so he had extended reach, and he could like hit people while no one else could, while he was hanging from like the ceiling on his gecko. Like, you can bring in those kind of like weird monsters that really utilize the space, that can cling to like three-dimensional kind of things.
Yeah, no, please don't do that to me. I think traps are very underrated in 5e.
Yeah, well, I kind of go both ways with traps. Like, on one hand, I really, really want them to work, but also on the other hand, they always kind of feel like I'm kind of being shitty towards players. It's like, yeah, if I set the DC too high, they can't see it. But also, if I don't set it high, then they're going to see it and they're just going to avoid it, and then my fun trap doesn't get to go off. And so there's always like this conflicting agenda in my heart. Like, how do I want this trap to work? Please trip this trap, but I don't want you guys to trip the trap.
And die. Well, I mean, that's... So, I just remember...
So maybe don't do traps that deal like 1,000 points of damage, but
well,
like...
And that's what always reminded me of, that was 1E, where it was just like, you fall, it was just simple, like, okay, you're walking along, pit trap, you don't see it, you fall into, a 20-foot pit filled with wooden spikes. Yeah, that's going to hurt, but of course, those spikes are covered in poison, failure save, you die. It's like, what? That's crazy.
Have I ever told... Okay, I don't think I've told you this one. So in the Great Modron March, there is a hilarious trap that takes place inside of a dungeon where if a character walks forward down a hallway, a secret door suddenly opens, 100,000 bats come shooting out of the room, and then they have to make a save, which would basically translate to with disadvantage in 5e, or they fall into a pit covered in spikes. The trapdoors then close back up, so they're trapped in this room, and then an electrical orb shoots around the room for about 10 minutes, dealing like 2d6 or 3d6 points of damage every time it hits you.
Awesome.
And basically, like, the book just says, and the character will die before the trap is done. And it's just like... All right.
Okay, then. Yeah, no, it's, that's horrible.
It's just like, holy crap, like that bat's coming out of nowhere. You then fall into a pit and there's this electric, like, dang, that person really loved his traps.
Yeah. I mean, well, here's the thing with traps. And this sounds horrible. It is a way to get players to stop and either stop being dicks, or to, if you notice that things are getting boring or players are just doing the same old stuff over and over again, throw a trap at them in a dungeon. I mean, dungeon diving, sure, is a little different, and you can throw a puzzle in here and there, but if they're not doing the right things, and I'm not sure how to phrase it, but put a trap in there. Don't make it deadly. But now all of a sudden they're like, oh, we shouldn't just be marching down there with our torches lit, kicking the next door open and fighting whatever there. It's like, there's more to this than just killing monsters. Maybe at the next door we should actually stop and listen. Yeah. Maybe we should stealth.
Yeah, and going along with, like, don't kill them with a trap, like, one of my favorite traps to do, and I hesitate to say this in front of Chris, because then he'll know my plans, is I love hiding a sphere of annihilation behind, like, an illusory, like, piece of flooring, or, like...
in a thing of darkness, you've already done it to me. In a
sphere of darkness, like, behind, like, an illusory door, like, any way that I can sneak a sphere of annihilation in there is, like, great to me.
You already did it to me, so...
I've done it to you multiple times, actually.
Great.
But,
great.
like, like, I also don't do it, like, I don't set the DC so high that they can't find it. I set the DC high enough where they feel like they barely found it. Like, it took, like, the person, or, like, one or two of the best people with perception to find it. They find the trap, and then they're like, oh, shit. Like, like, those are kind of fun traps to put in there, not because you're expecting them to work, but because it gives your players, like, this, that's bad. Yeah. That's real bad. So, like, you can put in traps that are more just eye candy and don't actually do anything, and instead are just for you to heighten the tension for your players, to, like, make them fear just a little bit more so that you can feed on it.
I don't know if we talked about this, but when we were doing the deep dive on the Mimic, there was, it was the old classic. You open up a room, it's a 30 by or 20 by 20 room. In the center of the room is a chest. And so everybody walks in there, we're like, it's a Mimic. It's definitely a mimic. So they go over and they do all the checks. They do, and then it's like, oh, okay. They open up the chest. It's a regular chest. The whole room's a mimic.
Oh yeah.
And it's just like, this is bad.
Well, it's like, why isn't the door opening? Why is my hand stuck to the door handle?
Yeah. Oh, we're gonna die. So yeah, I mean, so that's definitely. I like traps. I think they're fun. I think when we did a couple of a campaign and I was running, and somebody set off the sand trap room where you go in the room and you look around and they set it off and the room starts filling with sand. Mm-hmm. And drowning's horrible, but being buried alive in sand as it fills the room up and you're having to clamber up is really horrible to me. So I think everybody got out of that. But, I mean, I liked that. It was fun.
Well, spoilers for the adventure we just released. There is a sand trap in front of a vault door.
No, okay, great.
With a quicksand trap in front of a vault door, which basically just suffocates you. So, if you're interested about how to run a quicksand encounter, you should pick up that adventure.
I don't like any of those things. I know how I'm gonna die. Nature's gonna kill me, and it's gonna be that way. It's gonna do something like that, or my wife's gonna push me into a volcano when we go hiking sometime. But that's beside the point. I wouldn't blame her either. So there's a variety of different ways to spice up your campaign other than just tweaking monsters or throwing something different at them. I agree with you 100%. There's a lot of fun things to do, both on the player side and the on the DM side especially. I mean, great. Everything has resistance to fire. Well, you can tweak that somehow. You can change this. You can put them in a fucking water campaign where you can't use any water spells.
You seem very sad about that.
Well, it was funny though, because when we were playing the last one, your wife was actually like, so what happens if I cast and I forget it was a fire spell underwater, and you're just like, doesn't work. And I'm thinking to myself, yeah, I fucking figured that out a while ago. God damn it. And I'm like, okay, switch those spell slots out and never take that again. But I mean, yeah, there's fun things you can do, and I think a DM shouldn't limit themselves to the same old tropes, and players shouldn't be blinders on just walking down and killing things.
So next episode, we are going to do a review of Call of the Netherdeep, the newest adventure by WotC, focused in the Tal'Dorei campaign world.
Very interested to see how you feel about this one.
I don't really know much about it other than the fact that it looks like Shaggy is on the cover of the book.
Okay.
And I think it is part of it is in a desert kingdom. So far, I haven't really been wowed by any of the adventures, so
right.
I actually don't even know who's writing Call of the Netherdeep. I don't know if it's Matt Mercer or if it's someone else that was writing it, but I'll be interested to see who wrote it and, if what they do with it. I mean, it's got to be better than Storm King's Thunder, where half of the book is just gazetteer of the Sword Coast adventurers, Sword Coast area.
Yeah, no thanks. Yeah, I can't. Doesn't actually say who's writing it. Well, it says inspired by the campaigns of the hit series Critical Role, so it may be. I don't know. They just may have gotten everybody on there, and Mercer's just a consultant. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, he was a consultant for Waterdeep Dragon Heist, and they made a big deal about that, but I haven't seen any big deal about it. Okay. It's from level 3 to 12, so they removed the first 2 levels because those are boring, I guess.
And that's when you die. Although I know plenty of people that start at level 3, so everybody can have their, special little things they can do now. So, all right, well, who's doing the plug today, you or me?
I can do it. So thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this, please make sure you leave a review on iTunes or wherever you are listening to this podcast. If you like what we do and want to support us, check us out on patreon.com/dumpstat. You can also follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/statdump.
Yes, you got it right. Yay, that's 2 in a row.
And there's also our Reddit, so that you can just follow us there and then just be alerted whenever we post a new article every Monday, Friday, every other Thursday. If you join our Patreon, there's way more content that you get. There's Magic Item Mondays. There's Monster Monster Thursdays are every other week in between deep dives.
Yeah, we read a lot.
There's a lot that we so.
Well, and, don't forget the Discord.
Oh, yes,
That
and make
only
sure you
talk
join our
on.
Discord. You can find a link to that on the front page of our website, where I'm always there, Chris is never there, and, you
Because
know,
all you do is insult me.
can offer advice. There's several hundred people on there that can help you out, ask about rule clarifications, all that fun.
And we talked about a lot of things that are on the website now. I am confident Steven will put the link in for all of them.
Yes, I will, because I can't trust Chris to do it.
And you can't even trust me to do the weekly email, so...
Well, that's true.
All right. Say goodbye, Steven.